Oh, Vikas Bhai is there. Ashish Lirani is there. Okay. Hello, Hemant sir. How are you? I hope all good. Okay. Okay. So we'll just wait a couple of more minutes and then we can start.
Maybe maximum a minute more.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great.
Lots of people joining in.
Yeah. Okay, Saurabh. So I think at least we'll start with the introduction. So good evening, everybody. I'm Janay from Circle Wealth Advisors. I really thank you so much for taking your time out today uh, and attending the webinar. So definitely, as you can see it on your screen, the topic for today is how to choose investment products that make you wealthy. So before we begin, what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell you a little bit of a background about Circle Wealth Advisors and what we do as a firm and how we work. So Circle Wealth Advisors is a boutique wealth management firm. We are focused on serving HNI clients, and we currently have 80 families where we take care of all the major parts of their life when it comes to finances. So we're more like personal CFOs. That's something we take great pride in telling in describing ourselves. And it's we have completely relationship based understanding the way we function with our clients. And what we would like to do today is what we tend to discuss with our clients or something. We'll just take some certain part of it where we talk about investment products with our client in detail, and we would like to give you a glimpse of how we make them go through all these investment products. So to start with, I take great pleasure and great enjoyment, in introducing my partner Saurabh Mittal, somebody whom I've considered and as a brother, as a mentor, as a partner, we've along the journey. So I'll tell you, a little bit of a brief about Saurabh. A lot of you would have, some of you would have known about him, met him, or heard him, on Radio One, that he speaks from Monday to Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. with Rishi K. And also, he writes a lot for newspapers. He gets quoted a lot from a lot of newspapers. So that's and plus, his understanding is unparalleled when it comes to investment products. Is something of it's something that I would like to say is wherever we are stuck in terms of if there is an investment product that we can't understand, everybody in our office and in our fraternity as well, if we don't understand a certain product, we only have one number to call, and that is Saurabh Mittal. And with that, let's start for today, Saurabh. So the first question that I would like to discuss with Saurabh is we'll start what is wealth, and for that let's start with a poll. So if you can run the poll, Saurabh. So what is wealth what are these things? Which of the things that guarantee wealth creation for you? Is it your intelligence? Is it your high income? Is it the high returns? Uh, what do you think?
So before we start talking about the products, basically, we want to start with what do you mean by wealth, right? And
Right.
there are certain notions about, why am I not creating wealth is because I lack something. And so I just want to have your views as to what do you think is the most important factors that can help us in creating wealth even before we start understanding what really wealth is. So only 50% of the participants have voted till now. So we'll just take 10 more seconds and then end this poll. I just request everyone to participate fully in this because we exactly get to know what you are thinking and make session more and more interactive. If you have any views on this, maybe you can put it in chat and Jinay can track that because I will not be able to see my chat because of the screen sharing. So let's end this poll now and I will publish the results for you to see.
Okay. I think, so this is sort of as expected. A lot of people have said that, we require intelligence to create great wealth. And obviously, second is high returns. We have very, so the attendees are quite, they understand one thing very clearly, that income is not really related to wealth here. I think, that's a great plus for us.
Surprisingly, 10% of you feel that actually none of this is required, which is also very interesting. But majority of you do feel that what is intelligence is what is required. So great. So with that, let us start today's session, and I completely agree with you. In fact, I would say that none of this alone is enough. If you have very high intelligence, or if you have very high income, or even if you're investing in a product which produces very high returns, all of this will not guarantee creation of wealth. So let us first understand what is wealth. And so there was this interesting tweet storm which was done by Mr. Naval Ravikant. And I've picked up a few very, very interesting points from that. And this is how he has mentioned that what is wealth. So wealth is having asset that earn while you sleep, right? So it is a asset which generates an income where our active involvement is not required, so to say. So, and the income produced by that asset is enough for us to sustain our day-to-day living. If we have those kind of assets, only then we are actually creating wealth. But if that is wealth, then what is money? Money, as we all know, is just a mean of doing a transaction. It is how we transfer time and wealth. So if I want to buy an asset which can produce income for me without my active involvement, I need to pay money for that. If I want someone to work for me and I am employer and I'm employing someone, then I'm buying the time, and for that I'm doing a transaction through money. So money in that sense is only a agent which helps in doing the transaction. But ultimately, what we want is not more money. What we want is more wealth, such that that wealth helps us in creating passive income without being actively involved and can give us financial freedom, right? So, what are a few myths about wealth creation? What is it that a lot of people think is true, which we don't think? So, one is that, like all of you said, and we also completely believe that you don't need to chase high returns. High returns by any means does not guarantee you that you end up creating a lot of wealth. There have been a lot of people who have been trading into penny stocks trying to make very high returns. In fact, if you see on YouTube, these days the most kind of sort of clickbait for making people to click on their video is, advising a 5 rupee stock which would become a 100 rupee stock in next 6 months and so on and so forth. So all these kind of videos are being created because a lot of people feel that if we invest in a high return product, we'll be able to create wealth, but that is not the case. Again, like a lot of you said, that earning a lot of income is not necessarily equal to creating wealth. If you are trading time for earning money and you earn a lot of money, but if you don't invest it wisely, such that the wealth is created by investing in products, which can give you passive income, you're not creating wealth. And lastly, people who give loan. So I don't know if you will identify this with yourself, but who are these people who give loan are basically no other than the FD investors. Because when you are an FD investor, basically you are giving loan to the bank and expecting a interest against it for a fixed period of time, right? So people who give loan will never feature on Forbes list, right? So just by investing in fixed deposits, you cannot create wealth. And we'll see why and what we can do about it. So what really works? And I think this 3 slides actually sums up everything that I'm going to say, right? Only what I'm going to say after this is just for us to help and understand and create proof for ourselves that how these things are really valuable and will work for us. The most desirable way to create wealth is to own a piece of business. Now you may own that piece of business directly by starting your own business, or you can own that piece of business by investing in equities, right? And key to successful investment is finding the right asset allocation which fits you, your personal needs, and your personal risk profile, and then you stick to it with great discipline. So again, here there are 2 parts to it. One is designing the right asset allocation that works for you, and that asset allocation will only work for you only if it is aligned for your goals and aligned with your own personality and risk-taking ability. And once you have identified that, then you stick with it with great discipline. How do you stick with it? You keep on rebalancing it. Whenever you want to invest, you invest only in that asset allocation. Don't get swayed by times and conditions like this, or media noises like things like Brexit and RBI policy and Fed policy and so on and so forth. Because those things will keep on happening. So if you are able to stick to your desired allocation, that is a key to successful investment and wealth creation. So with this, I want to now really start. This is actually a crux of what I want to communicate. With this, now let's start and understand how does it practically look like. If I want to do all that, what is it that I need to really understand, and how can I really execute it? How can I create a right asset allocation for myself that suits me, and what products are useful for that? So as we start talking about it, see, there are plethora of products which are available right now, right? There are postal savings, there are fixed deposits, there are mutual funds, debentures, bonds. Even in mutual funds, there are so many types of mutual funds, and there are PMS, AF, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of products which are available. But what you have to understand is that ultimately, when you invest, your money will go in a particular asset class. So that is the base source through which you will generate return. And if you are able to understand the nature of the source, then it becomes very, very easy. So let me give you an example. So we know that there is rice. With rice, you can make pulao, you can make biryani, you can even make kheer, right? But ultimately, if you know that what is the property of rice, it will become easier for you to judge whether that thing is of your taste or not. So similarly, before even talking the product, let's take a step back and understand when we invest, what asset class we are investing into. Let me just start with a very short video on this.
This is the story of a wise old man who had 4 clever sons. He worked all his life very hard and accumulated wealth and thought about equally distributing among his children. On his deathbed, he gave each of them a bag of gold coin and told them to use it the way they want to create wealth for themselves. The first son felt very emotionally attached to the bag of money and kept in his vault. This bag was auspicious to him and never thought of selling it. Second son bought a house, which was worth 5 bags of coin. He borrowed 4 bags and gave property on rent. Third son just went to the bank and deposited his bag. Bank promised him to give 2 bags in return after 10 years. Fourth son invested in an upcoming business, where his partners promised to share the profits as the business grew. Who do you think is the wisest son of all?
Okay, so before you answer this question, let's look at this analogy, right? And that's how I created. So we see that all the 4 sons used money in a different manner, right? And when you do that, basically what you're trying to do is that you are investing in different asset classes. So what are those asset classes? So first two sons chose to invest in physical assets. So, as the name suggests, because they are physical, obviously they are non-financial assets. And physical assets are something that you can touch and feel and know that they are for real. They are not only on paper, right? So let us understand how physical assets work. In physical assets, we have two categories. So we saw son A, the first son just decided to keep gold as it is, as an investment. So we all know gold earlier was used as a currency and now it has a particular storage value. So gold is the first asset class, which is a physical asset class. And second is real estate, where second son chose to take some leverage, take a loan, and then buy a property and put it on rent. But let us understand how do these asset classes actually work. And so when you invest into product, once you get an understanding that how these asset classes work, you'll automatically know how that product will work for you and whether it will be useful for you in your asset allocation. Just before we start, I just want to tell you one more thing, that I'm not going to talk about returns here. Our benchmark or the tipping point for us is the inflation. So in our country, the government declared inflation is around 4 to 5%. So whatever returns that we're going to talk about is in relation to inflation. So you can make a sense of about what return a particular asset class will make with the sense of inflation that we're talking about. And because inflation is something which is going to always be contemporary, if I say something like maybe 10 years back fixed deposit returns were 10%. Today that does not hold true any longer. But what holds true is its relationship to inflation. So we'll always be talking about returns in relation to inflation. So let's start with gold. How does gold behave, right? So what are the pros and cons and what is the final objective if you want to invest in gold? Like I said, it is a physical asset class. It gives you a touch and feel and gives the satisfaction of owning it. We also, as Indians, have a huge consumption value towards gold. We use it in gifting, during marriages, even a lot of times during festivals as well. So eventually, if you are investing in gold, it can eventually be consumed directly in form of gold. The biggest advantage of gold is liquid. So what is liquidity? Liquidity is a fancy word in finance. Basically, liquidity is the speed at which you can convert the asset into cash. So the faster you are able to convert your asset into cash, it is called very liquid. And if you face challenges in selling that asset and converting into cash, it is called less liquid. So as we all know that gold is a very liquid asset class. You can just go to any jeweler and sell it immediately and you will get money against your gold. So what are negative things against gold? There is no cash flow. Again, cash flow might sound like a jargon to some people. So when I say cash flow, that means you will not be able to earn an income out of gold. So for example, if you're giving a loan to someone, you will earn interest every year or every month. Similarly, if you have a property, you might earn rent on it. So there is a cash flow which is coming on a regular interest basis. But here in gold, there is no way in which you can have a cash flow because there is no money coming in. Also, as contrary to popular belief, gold is actually a very volatile asset class. A lot of us feel that gold is a safe haven and you never lose money. You will be surprised to know that there have been instances in history where even after staying invested in gold for 5 years, there has been negative returns. So a lot of people feel that gold prices always go up and you never lose money in gold, but that's not the case. There are instances in the past that even after investment of 5 years, there has been loss after investing in gold. So gold is a very volatile asset class, and generally it is considered that although we're doing a new study on this data, but gold doesn't give you a huge opportunity to wealth creation. It will only grow at par with inflation. So what is the final objective of gold? Gold is a hedge against inflation, like I mentioned. It will always go at par with the inflation. 10 to 15% allocation in your portfolio. So if this is the asset allocation that I was talking about, that how much weightage should I give to each asset class? So we are saying that if you can give a weightage to 10 to 15% in your long-term portfolio, it will bring stability to the portfolio. But it cannot be completely relied upon for wealth creation, as it will only grow with the inflation. So which brings me to now the next asset class, which is real estate. So let's understand what are the pros and cons of real estate. Real estate, at least in India, has the potential to beat inflation, right? There have been period where real estate has given phenomenal returns, and it has given returns much higher than inflation. Also, because of its touch and feel and being a physical asset, it also acts as a status symbol. I mean, you can show off your gold, you can show off your real estate. You can never show off your mutual fund investments, right? And also another advantage that it is an option to earn a regular income in form of rent. So these are all benefits of investing in real estate. What are the negatives which demotivates us anyone to invest in gold? Like I said, it is not liquid, right? It might take months or even years for some people to liquidate their real estate. In fact, we have seen that there are people who are so heavily invested in real estate that they actually have no liquidity, and they are not even able to maintain their day-to-day living. So we call such kind of people as asset rich but cash poor. So they have huge amount of assets in form of real estate, but they don't have any cash coming in for their day-to-day expense. Also, because when you buy a property, it is not divisible, right? I mean, if you have a property worth 1 crore, and if you want say only 5 lakh rupees, you can't sell a part of your property and generate that 5 lakh rupees. So it is not divisible. It is either 0 or 1. So either you keep the whole property or you have to sell the whole thing. And like I said, huge investments results in no diversification, because you're investing in one property which might cost you a ticket size of 1.5 crore. It will be difficult for you to diversify and buy multiple properties. So that concentration risk is very high when you're investing in a physical real estate. Also, if you're investing from a investment perspective and you want to give it on rent, there is some bit of physical involvement which is required. You have to really physically maintain the property, make sure it is painted, regularly. You have to deal with the brokers. You have to make sure that the property is secure. No one is trying to take the illegal possession of the property and so forth. So there's some bit of physical involvement which is required, and you need to put an effort to maintain it. So what is the final objective of real estate? High concentration and liquidity risk is very deterrent to real estate investment. Wealth creation is possible. It has the potential to create wealth and also a potential to give you a regular income. So this is how real estate works. So we have spoken about two physical asset classes. So now let's talk about two financial asset classes. So these are four major asset classes that we as Indian investors have exposure to. So what is debt and equity? So basically, just to give you a very simple analogy, in any business, you need capital to run that business, right? So suppose if I'm running a company ABC, and if I take a loan from you, in which I promise you to pay a fixed rate of interest and return your money after a fixed duration, that means it is called debt. So there are various names to it. It's called debt, it's called fixed income, so on and so forth. But for our discussion purpose, we'll call it debt. And the other way of putting money is to actually put in capital. So I might partner with someone and I might put in some capital, and my partner would put in some capital, and we will share the profit and losses of the business. If the money is coming in form of capital, it is called equity. If the money is coming in form of loan, it is called as debt. So that is the difference between debt and equity. So just to sum it up, any investments that you do where you get a fixed rate of interest which is already pre-declared, and the tenure for which you are investing is also clear, is a debt investment. So all your PPF, NSC, KVP, bonds, fixed deposits, these are all nothing but debt investments. And like we just discussed, these are all financial assets and not physical assets. So now let's look at what are the pros and cons of debt investment. Now it is seemingly easy to understand and execute. All of us in our life would have done a fixed deposit, and we know there is no real challenge to it. But why have I used word seemingly? Because for us, it is a very simple transition to go to a bank or maybe an NBFC or a corporate company and place our money in fixed deposit. But you have to understand that crores and crores of money, trillions of dollars are invested by corporations and governments. These are all money which is floating in debt, and there are so many products to it. So it is a very complex world involving huge amount of money. but it doesn't really impact us directly. For us, it is a seemingly very easy to understand product that I'm placing a 5-year fixed deposit with 7% interest on it. So I know that for next 5 years, I'm going to earn 7% interest every year. Another advantage, like I just said, it is predictable. The income is fixed and it is very, very predictable. Uh, Ideally, when you invest in debt, you should invest that in a way that the money can easily be liquidated. So if I want to go and pre-mature my fixed deposit, it can be done easily. So if you're investing in a debt product and there is a lock-in, we would not want, it is not something which is a very advisable kind of scenario. So ideally, debt is very, very liquid and it should be liquidated at demand. What it also helps is that when you're doing your asset allocation and you're doing your rebalancing, if the product is very, very liquid, it becomes easy for you to do the rebalancing. So that's how debt should be looked at. Now, what are the cons of debt? It will, most of the time, it will always underperform inflation, especially when you consider paying taxes on it. So once you have paid taxes, there is a very rare chance that you will make returns above inflation. That means there is a guarantee that you will always lose the value of money over a period of time if you stay invested only in fixed deposit. And because there is no wealth creation, because it is always underperforming inflation, obviously there is no opportunity to create wealth. And last very important point is that bad credit can lead to complete loss of wealth. What I mean by that is that, you know, even before the COVID pandemic, we had seen that Indian debt market was going through a lot of turbulence. So there were names like ILFS, DHFL, in some cases Z papers. We know that things happened at PMC Bank, Yes Bank, where depositors were not able to get their money. In Yes Bank, obviously it was temporary, but in all these cases, depositors were not able to recover their money. So in the lure of making 1 or 2% higher return than a safe credit, people tend to take a higher risk, and that bad credit can actually lead to complete loss of wealth. So in equity, there might be volatility that money might go up and down, but here it is again like a 0-1 case. If the company goes, it becomes defunct, you lose all your money. So what is the final objective? Invest for liquidity for short to medium term goals. Less volatility helps in diversification and it also gives you regular income. So now this brings me to my fourth asset class, which is equity, right? So like I said, equity is a way in which you are participating by putting money as a capital in the business, and you then tend to gain from the profit or loss that the business makes. That's how you should approach equity. That when you are buying a share, you are actually participating in that business. So what are the pros and cons? It gives you huge wealth creation possibility because there are so many because the exchanges are in place and regulators are in place. It gives you enough liquidity. So if you are holding a good company, uh, there is there might rarely be a chance where you might not be able to liquidate or convert your equity investments into cash. Also, like I said, here the diversification is easy. So you can invest with as low as 100 rupees in mutual funds. And even if you want to buy equity directly, you can even buy one single share. In that way, you can actually diversify your investments. These are all plus points of equity. The negative point, like we all know, the biggest thing is that it is volatile. Uh, and mostly we experience that volatility. So like I said, even gold is volatile, but there are no news channels who kind of make so much noise about what's happening with gold and such kind of things. And there is no price ticker which is going on here because there are dedicated 3 or 4 news channels, so many media publications who keep on speaking about what is going to happen, how it is going to be impacted, what will this policy do, and so and so forth, to actually experience their volatility. We also feel that in equity, it is very difficult to invest on your own because you should have capabilities, skills, and time to study these companies and these businesses on your own, study their annual reports and what management has to say, and then invest. So it's always better to hire a professional fund manager for this. And lastly, it is because of volatility, it is a long-term investment and it requires patience for you to hold it for a long term, and then only it will bear fruit for you. So the final objective is that equity is a great asset class for creating wealth. Volatility is high, more than even if it is not high, you actually experience it. Look from an investment purpose and don't try to trade in or try to make quick money by buying today and selling tomorrow, those kind of things. We strongly feel that it is very difficult to find a trader who has been consistently beating market. I mean, if you look at all the great investors that you would have heard of, maybe it is Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch, or back in India it is R.K. Damani or Rakesh Jhunwala. Most of them are long-term investors who have invested in good companies at good price and just then sat on it and enjoyed the benefits of growth in that business. So this brings me to my second poll, and now I want you to answer this question. Yeah, who's the wisest son? Wow. So even people who joined in late, I guess they would be able to guess what we are talking about. So what is your preference? What do you think is the smart thing to do, right? So I'll just end this poll. 70% of you have already voted. I'll share the results with you. Interestingly, whenever I do this poll, I get similar results, but our economy doesn't look like this. So fixed income and real estate earned only 7% votes, while equity earned 87% vote. But in real life, it is completely opposite. So in India, fixed deposit only in banks is 150 lakh crores, while the mutual fund size is only 25 lakh crores. Only what 20% of the fixed deposit bank fixed deposit size, the whole mutual fund industry. And I'm not even going in gold. Gold is almost equal to the whole market capitalization of India, the amount of money which is invested. So in reality, all the people here do say that equity is something which is very wise to do. But in reality, what we are seeing is that a lot of people are invested mainly into physical assets, and then they would start investing. When they invest in financial assets, they would start with fixed income, and then they would uh, invest in equities. So I did not share this result. I'm so sorry. So these are the results. Yeah, 87% in equity and 7% in real estate and 7% in fixed income. So this is my take to it, right? I think there is no right answer to it. All asset classes are important. They have a role in your asset allocation. Depending on what stage of investment are you in and what is your intention. So if you are someone who is looking for, if you are very young and you are looking to create wealth over a period of time and create a corpus for you which is big enough for you to give financial freedom, then obviously you would have a separate different asset class for someone who's already retired, made enough wealth, and is looking for a consistent income month and month from the corpus that he's already accumulated, right? So depending on what situation you are in, what your goal is, how far that goal is, depending on that, you will have to come and decide your right asset allocation. And this is what I was talking in reference to what I said earlier. So all asset classes are important. Like a wholesome meal has all the macronutrients of carbs, fats, and protein. You can't say that I will just stop consuming fat or I'll just stop consuming protein. It doesn't work that way. All these are important. Similarly, all asset classes have their own function to play, and they are important in your overall asset allocation and overall portfolio that you create for yourself. But what is more important is to have an overexposure or bias to one asset class. We have seen that some people, they call themselves equity investors and they'll put everything that they have in equity. Likewise, there are some people who say that we are real estate investors and they'll put everything in real estate. So that, according to us, is very dangerous. What is more important is to keep your goal in mind and then create an asset allocation which will suit you to have that journey peacefully. So with that out of our way, now let's actually look at how do we use this asset class. So obviously we are not going to talk about real estate. I think it is most common, and like I said, it brings in its own complications of concentration risk and liquidity. So we're not going to talk about real estate. We are going to talk about how do we use fixed income, how do we use gold, what products are available, and how do we invest in equities. Uh, it is already 7:35 now, and I would want to go a bit fast. So at the end of the day, if you have any Q&A, we'll always be there to make sure that all your questions are answered. Right. So let's move ahead. So fixed income can actually be used for cash management, right? Here, if I have if I have goals which I want to consume in next 2 to 3 years or maybe even 4 years, I will use debt as my asset class to invest into, because my focus is on liquidity and capital protection. Right? In next 2 to 3 years, I don't want to make investment where I try to make huge amount of return, but because of volatility, I might not end up making that kind of return, and I might not be able to consume or use that money for the way I want. So here is what debt will help you in doing or achieving those goals. Again, here I would want you to distinguish debt into two parts. One is first to create an emergency fund. So if you're someone who's not created an emergency fund, even before you start your wealth creation journey, what we strongly suggest is that you create an emergency fund for you. And as the word suggests, it will come in handy to you. God forbid if you have to go to any kind of emergency where you're not able to generate that active income. Maybe it is because of hospitalization or an accident, or maybe because you are asked to leave or whatever reason it is. If there is something which goes against the plan, that's when the emergency fund is going to come in handy. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just, according to me, the best option is either to have a sweep-in bank account, where after a particular trigger, the money automatically gets invested into a fixed deposit and it stays there. So you know that it is available for you at any point in time. So that is one way of maintaining an emergency fund. Or better yet, the another way of doing it is to have money in liquid fund. Uh, Liquid funds, as the name suggests, is very liquid in nature. There are no really too much of penalties of going in and coming out of it. The only one bigger advantage is that because if money ultimately lies in your bank, you would tend to spend it rather than keeping it for the emergency times. Here, because it is completely separate and you would have to take an effort to do a transaction, and the chances are that you will be able to manage the fund more efficiently, and it also gives you higher post-tax return. Is more, it has a tax arbitrage to it. The only disadvantage with liquid fund is that it takes one day. So in bank, which is like both sides of one coin, is that because the money is so liquidly available, you might spend it. Here, in case of emergency, it will just take one day to reach. So if you need money today, in working hours, you have to request for the redemption, and the money will be in your bank early in the morning tomorrow. So this is about emergency fund. And again, for short-term goals, like if you want to save money for buying a vehicle or maybe a two-wheeler 2 to 3 years down the line, if you want to buy an expensive gadget or a white good or something, or you want to plan for a vacation 2 to 3 years down the line. See, I know for all these consumption things, loans are available, but ideally what we suggest is that you plan for it, save money in appropriate asset class. Here, as I'm suggesting it should be in debt asset class, and create that corpus and use that money for whatever thing that you need. So for this, there's fixed deposits are available, there are debentures which are available, and there are short-term debt mutual funds which are also available. So you can use any of these according to your liking and preference, which will more or less give you the same kind of result, where the focus, like I said, is more on liquidity and capital protection. So this brings me to my third poll. Just a second. Yeah. So going ahead of this now, before we get into the next section, I want you to answer this. What do you really want from your investment, or what do you think you will call a good investment? If that investment is earning 25% return for you, or is it helping you in fulfilling your wish, whatever it may be? Maybe your wish is to buy a dream car or maybe a dream house. You want to ensure that you are able to fulfill nice education for your children or financial freedom for yourself. What do you think is a good investment? So 45 seconds into the poll, I'll just end the poll. Again, 60% of the people have voted. Let's share the results. So overwhelmingly 92% of you have obviously chosen to fulfill your dreams. And only 8% of you have chosen that you would want to invest in a product which gives you very high returns. And this brings me to the analogy that, whether you want to win the race or whether you want to complete the race, right? Uh, for me as an investor, and this is, I'm speaking for myself, what is important for me is that I complete the race. And this is what 92% of you resonate with, that it doesn't matter because winning is a factor of how the other people are performing, right? It doesn't matter if my neighbor is generating 20-25% return. I don't know how it is generating, but for me what is important is even if I generate 25% return and I don't achieve these goals, then that 25% return is of no value to me, right? If I wanted my child to go into a great school and even with those 25% return I'm not able to create enough money or I'm able to get it at the time when I actually needed it for my child to go to that school or do that education, then that 25% really doesn't matter to me. So what is more important than when you are investing? Probably, this may be the third or fourth time I'm saying the same thing, is that look at your goals and create your investments or design your asset allocation based on the goals that you have, the ultimate thing that you want to achieve. Because there is no such thing as a lot of people come to us saying that we want what is the best investment to do, what is the best product that I can invest into, where can I get the highest return. These things are of no use. I mean, and do not work for you. What is more important is that what is your goal, and with that money, will you really be able to achieve your goal or not? So with that, let's move forward. So what is wealth creation? So like I just said, wealth creation should always be accompanied with goal planning. Envisage the end goal of investments. In most of our cases, retirement or the financial freedom, like I just said, and children's education are of the highest priority. When you are talking about wealth creation, fixed income would not really be helpful. And real estate, like I said, has huge amount of concentration risk and liquidity risk. So equities to our mind should be given higher weightages when you are trying to do wealth creation. Like I also mentioned that 10 to 15% of your wealth should be kept in gold. And according to us, for you to have an exposure to gold, sovereign gold bond is the best way to have that. Let me just quickly tell you how it works, and then we'll go to mutual fund. So, sovereign gold bond is a combination of debt and gold. It is issued by RBI in tranches, and because it is issued by Government of India, there is no credit risk to it. Also, because it is in electronic form, there is no physical gold. There is less of emotional attachment, and people are more open to buy and sell it depending on what rationality or what the asset allocation tells us according to the goal. So people don't want to just hold it and keep it. And there is like I said, in gold there is no cash flow, but here because you're investing in a bond form, you get paid to invest in gold, which I think is a very wonderful feature. So you get 2.5% per annum over and above the price growth of gold that you envisage for which you are investing. It is a maturity period of 8 years, and the minimum investment you can do is of 1 gram to 4 kgs in 1 year. There is a lock-in period of 5 years, but it can be sold on exchange. So I'm not putting too much time here. If you have any questions, I've put my email ID on the presentation. You can ask me, but do consider investing in sovereign gold bond before you, if you want to have exposure to fixed income. Now let's have this very quick video and understanding how mutual fund work.
What is a mutual fund? Mudra Pandit has always dreamt of building a house of his own and taking his family to Europe for a holiday. To fulfill these, Mudra has been saving small amounts in saving accounts and fixed deposits. However, his investments are not growing at the rate he would like them to. Mudra is now looking for an avenue to maximize the earnings on his savings. A little bit of research shows Mudra that for investors like him, mutual funds can be an option to explore. Let's understand how a mutual fund works. Suppose Mudra visits a restaurant and feels like having 3 different types of pizzas, but has money for only one. He could invite 2 of his friends to share the meal with him. The 3 of them could then together buy 3 pizzas and share 1 slice each from each of the 3 pizzas. This also means that in case one of the pizzas is not to their liking, they still have the other 2 to ensure an overall enjoyable meal. This is exactly how a mutual fund works. It pulls in money from several investors to invest in a variety of instruments. This tends to lower the risk. When Mudra buys 1 unit of a mutual fund, he actually owns a small part of each of the instruments that his mutual fund has invested in, such as stocks, bonds, and other securities. Mudra has neither the time nor the financial expertise to decide how he should divide his investment between these multiple instruments in order to extract the greatest profits. This is where a professional fund manager in a mutual fund comes in. The manager divides the investments not only between different instruments, but also into various sectors within the same instrument. For instance, a mutual fund manager may decide to invest in shares in the cement, telecom, IT, and infrastructure sectors. Even if some of these sectors perform poorly, there is a likelihood that the performance of the other sectors will make up for it. Many might think that the cost of having an expert fund manager would be very high. But the best part about mutual funds is that the cost of professional investment management is shared by all the investors, making it low per individual investor. Important points to remember are: mutual funds pool in money from several investors. Mutual funds invested in a diversified portfolio. Mutual funds are managed by professional fund managers. The cost of professional fund management is shared by all the investors.
So, this was a very simple video for understanding mutual funds. I hope all of you got the crux of it. So what mutual fund does is it solves 2 biggest problems for us as an investor. One, it gives us diversification, right? If I'm investing into a mutual fund, and you're going to understand it in a better way, that when you invest in mutual fund, ultimately you're investing in a pool of money, and that money is eventually invested into 40, 50, 70 different companies if it is an equity mutual fund. So with only a small amount of, say, maybe even if you're investing 1 lakh rupees, actually your money gets diversified into those 40, 50 stocks. And because there is a professional fund manager who's managing it, who's tracking those stocks, who's going through their annual reports, understanding their balance sheets, it has been professionally run. Like I just said, it's a pooled vehicle where collective money and expenses are shared amongst all the existing investors. Again, to reiterate, it is not an asset class. It is just a medium to invest in asset class of what we desire. So you have equity mutual funds, which will invest only in equities. You will have debt mutual funds, which will invest in debt, and gold mutual fund, which will invest in gold. And we're going to talk about it, so on and so forth. So remember, when people say that I want to invest in equities and I want to invest in mutual fund to diversify, actually you're not diversifying, because ultimately you are investing in the same asset class. Never select. There is a whole science on how you should select a mutual fund, but most of the time we see that a lot of people invest in mutual fund based on the NAV. So if there's a new fund offer, people say that because it is available at 10 rupees, we bought it. It doesn't really work that way. Never invest in a fund based on the NAV. NAV is of the least importance when you're trying to select a fund. So with that, this is my 4th poll, just to gauge as to how our investors our audience is familiar with mutual fund as an investment product. So have you invested in mutual funds before, or you've never invested in mutual funds? If you have invested, if you have not invested in mutual funds, obviously you want to know the reason as to why you've not done. But even if you have invested in mutual funds, but you have not gone wholeheartedly and you had certain concerns, it will be good if you answer the second question as well, as to what do you think has been the concern for you to not going all out and investing in mutual funds. Can we have people answering it, please? So we are 1 minute into the poll. I'll just close it and share the results with you all. So we have fairly experienced audience. 83% of you have already invested into mutual fund. You know how it works. But still only 33% feel that they've just been completely into it and they're comfortable with the concept of mutual fund. But there are 25% people who still feel that it is difficult to understand. 25% people feel that they don't want to invest in mutual funds because they feel that they can manage it better by investing in equities directly. There are some people who are not investing from the fear of volatility. And some people say that they are very happy with their fixed deposit returns and they don't want to experience the volatility, and that's why they're not investing. And I guess there are some people who will also put their answers in chat. So we'll discuss it at the end of the session. So very interesting. I hope so what we're going to do next is try to understand how various mutual funds actually work. How do you differentiate one mutual fund from other? There are so many mutual fund types which are available, and how do you differentiate? So there is growth option, there is dividend option, there is multi-cap, there is corporate debt, and so on and so forth. So how do you really identify which mutual fund will work for you, and how do these investments really, how do you differentiate one mutual fund from another? So first way of looking at mutual fund is to understand that, like I just said, it is not an asset class. It is a medium for you to invest in asset class. So we already spoke about these asset classes. So one way of differentiating mutual fund is to first understand which asset class this fund is going to invest into, whether it is an equity fund, a debt fund, or a gold fund. And there are also hybrid funds which are available. So a hybrid fund, as the name suggests, is the combination of two asset classes in one mutual fund scheme. Then what SEBI did in 2018 was that it created categories. So there are 36 mutual fund categories, 10 in equities, 16 in debt, 7 in hybrid, and then there are other categories for ETF, and which is called other categories. So there is, again, although SEBI tried to simplify it, but it is not as easy to understand it. But just for our understanding, and these are very popular categories. So if it is a large cap fund, that means the fund is invested into large companies. So top large companies in the sense that the capital of these companies are really huge. So top 100 companies are called as large companies, and that is how SEBI has defined it. So the funds which are investing only in these top 100 companies are called large cap mutual funds. From 101 to 150th, it's called medium cap. So that's why it's called mid cap. And any company which is smaller than those top 250 companies, so 100 for large, 150 for mid, and anything below those 250 companies is called a small cap. So there are large cap, mid cap, small cap. Again, if there is a fund which is investing in any of these companies, it is called multi-cap. And then there are sectoral funds. So if it is a banking fund, that means it will invest only in companies which are in the business of banking. If there is an IT fund, so that fund will only invest into IT companies. So likewise, there are so many equity categories are available. Similarly, in debt, there is short-term, long-term. There are funds which will invest into gilt, so only government-issued securities. And there are corporate funds which will invest only in securities which are issued by corporate. So there are a whole lot of categories available, but these are something which are very common to us, and you can understand what category that fund is invested in. Then there are also, you can differentiate fund based on the transaction ability. So the most common and most popular form of transaction is an open-ended fund. Basically, you can invest at any point of time and exit at any point of time. This is the most desirable way of investing in mutual fund. But there are also something called as close-ended fund or FMPs. These funds are available for only a short period of time when the fund is launched by the fund house, and it has a specific close date. After the closing date or the maturity date, so to say, which might happen after 3 years or 5 years, or even 1 year in some cases, the money is either returned back to the investor or the fund is converted into an open-ended scheme. So these were very popular until last year, but now you don't see a lot of companies because of some tweaks in the regulation. A lot of companies don't come out with close-ended funds. Then there are exchange-traded funds. These are nothing but mutual funds, but they are traded on exchange. So instead of I am going to fund house and for doing a transaction of buying or selling the units, I can do it on exchange, and my counterparty instead of being a fund house can be any other investor. So that is exchange traded fund. It is gaining popularity in India, but we feel that it is not very advisable for retail investors. People who are largely investing in ETFs are big institutional investors. So your EPFO, your NPS, treasuries of big companies, when they want to park their money, they are using ETF as the way to invest. I don't think time has come really in India for retail investors to look at it. So we would advise people to not try and invest in ETF. And lastly, it is ELSS, which is a scheme where you help save tax. So the only difference is that it is an open-ended scheme because you can invest at any point in time, but there is a lock-in of 3 years. So because you get a tax advantage or tax benefit on it, there is a lock-in for 3 years. After 3 years, there is no such thing as maturity or money will come back to you. Again, the units are free for you to sell. So you can, after 3 years of lock-in being opened up, you can sell your units at any point in time. Then there are growth funds and dividend funds. All these are same funds which are available in these various forms. So in growth, basically, whatever is the appreciation in the unit is reinvested. So you actually enjoy the power of compounding. In dividend, if you want some income, you take the dividend option, where the growth is then whatever is the appreciation in the price is distributed in form of dividend. Currently, the way taxation has been devised, it is completely unfavorable to go for a dividend option. So what we are saying is that not only you don't do any dividend option investments going forward, but also if you already have existing investments in dividend option, it is advisable that you convert it into a growth option. Then there is something called as a regular plan and direct plan. So basically, a regular plan is something where there is a intermediary which is supporting you and advising you and helping you to decide which fund to invest into. So even your banks are your intermediaries, your broker or a stockbroker is also an intermediary. And if you invest through them, you get a regular plan. If you feel that you don't need any help and you are educated enough to decide which scheme to buy, then you can invest directly, and that is why it's called direct plan. You save on commission, which ultimately means lesser expenses and higher returns for you. So every scheme has a regular option as well as direct option. Lastly, what is the style of management? So there is something called as an active fund and a passive fund. An active fund is the fund where the fund manager calls all the shots. He decides which company to buy, which company to sell, and how much company to buy, what should be the weightage of that company in the portfolio. A passive fund is nothing but something which will mimic a benchmark. So Nifty is the most popular benchmark, Nifty or Sensex. So you have Nifty fund. So what will that fund do is that it will not try to do any active. Whatever the companies are there in Nifty, those exact 50 companies in the same weightage will be part of the fund. And we'll understand this as we read the fact sheet. So the fund manager has no job in passive fund. It completely tries to give you the returns which is at par with the benchmark index. So there are a whole lot of passive funds available like Nifty 50, Top 100, Nifty Next 50. There are a lot of benchmarks and a lot of passive funds which are available. So now let's get to the fact sheet. I am sorry we are getting a bit delayed, but let's try and understand how the fact sheet works. Just a second. And I want to do it completely practically with you. And with that, I think we'll end our presentation. So I just want to quickly run this fact sheet for you. So how do you really look at the fact sheet? So very simply, and this is just a, you just do a Google search. I hope you are able to see my screen. And I click on this download fact sheet. I have done that already, but I'm just trying to do it again for you so that you know how it works. And you get this form. Go on fact sheet. Most of the fund houses would have similar kind of interface. And now since we are in the month of July, you will get a fact sheet for the month of June. Okay. So I would download this fact sheet. Desktop. Okay. Now it is a 152-page document. Don't get swayed by it. Suppose I just want to tell you about how it works. So every fund house has their own commentary in the start and so on and so forth. What is their market view and what they feel, how the market will perform. This is the index, and we're going to, just for the sake of discussion, and this is not what we are advising or something, but just for the sake of discussion, let's understand how a fact sheet works. So this is one fund, and we'll just understand this fact sheet and complete the presentation. I'll try to complete the next maximum of 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. So this is the fact sheet for ICICI Prudential Blue Chip Fund. Okay. It was earlier called as ICICI Prudential Focused Blue Chip Fund. So it gives you a bit of history. This tells you as to what is the intention of this fund and whether it is a high risk or not, depending on SEBI's definition. Now this style box is very important. So in a lot of funds, you will see this style box. So basically you see whether the fund is a large cap, mid cap or a small cap. And there are various investing styles in equity, growth, blend and value. This is a discussion for some other day. But if you see this is highlighted, which indicates that this fund has primarily huge investments into large cap. And they have some portion maybe in mid cap, it is spilling a bit, which is okay, which is allowed by SEBI. But majority of their investments is in large cap. Now, who are the fund managers? These are two fund managers, and you know them since how long they are managing the fund and what is their overall experience. This is an indicative horizon as to what is, according to ICICI, an ideal horizon for you to invest. Most of the equity fund you will find it for 5 years. 23rd May 2008 was the first day when this fund was launched. So this is the launch date. What is the monthly average AUM? So currently the fund is managing 22,641 crores. That is the amount of money which is already invested into this fund, and the fund managers are managing it. This is the average for the month, and this is the closing for the month. So average is 22,641 and closing is 22,880, which means if the closing is above average, that means a lot of people have invested more money in this month with this fund. Now this is where I wanted to tell you the differentiation. So this particular fund is available in all the 4 options. Growth option, like you can see that the growth option NAV is higher because it is the money is invested into it and you are getting the benefit of compounding. And dividend option, the NAV is definitely lower because whatever was the growth, it was distributed in form of dividend, whatever was the appreciation. Then here you see direct and again growth option, dividend option. Here you see that the growth option NAV is higher than a regular plan, which is the first option. Doesn't mean that it is expensive. A lot of people feel that why should I pay higher NAV and get lesser units? That is not the case. This is a proof that if someone would have invested in the direct plan, his NAV would have been higher. That means he would have earned a higher returns on his investment. So this is growth and dividend option. As it says that both the options are available. In most of the funds, you will find growth and dividend options are available. This is the minimum amount that one can invest. I hope you are able to see my cursor. Yeah. So 100 rupees, like I said, you can just start your investment with 100 rupees. And even if you want to top up, so say I have invested 100 rupees and I want to go top up, I can again do that top up with 100 rupees. There is no entry load. So when you invest, all your money is invested. There is no load or penalty or charges to it. And if you redeem after 1 year, there is no exit load also. But if you want to redeem your investment or withdraw your investment before completion of 1 year, then whatever is the value that you're withdrawing, you will have to pay a 1% exit load. This is SIP, which is a regular investment that I'm sure all of you would have heard. Most of you would have heard. And there is an option to invest in a frequency of daily, weekly, fortnightly, and monthly options. And again, here the minimum investment is only 100 rupees. If you're doing a quarterly frequency, then the minimum investment 5,000 rupees. I'm not trying to give you the features of this fund. I'm trying to help you in understanding how the fact sheets are written, and so that you can understand these features on your own when you see a fact sheet. There's also an SWP option which is available where you can withdraw money every month. And then there's something called as STP, where you can systematically transfer money from one fund to another fund. Here also daily option is available, and the frequency is 250 rupees every day. There is no cap to minimum redemption amount. You can withdraw any amount that you want. There is a dividend history again, which is available in this fact sheet. Now, most important thing, this is the expense. So as you can see, if it is a regular plan, the expense is 1.79%. And if it is a direct plan, then the expense is 1.10%. So there is a difference of 0.69%, which you will save if you are investing into a direct plan. I'm not trying to promote direct plan, but I just want you to understand. There might be other costs that you would be paying if you're not taking the help of an advisor, like reporting structure. Again, there are apps available for it. But to my mind, having an advisor always helps you in taking better decisions. Now, this is the this gives you all the operational details about the scheme. This is the performance. So, how has the scheme performed in last 1 year? It is benchmarked to Nifty 100, and there is an additional benchmark of Nifty 50. These are all indices which are available. So, in last 1 year, this fund has actually done worse than Nifty 100 and even Nifty 50. So Nifty 100 fell by 10.64%, but this fund fell even more and give you a negative return of 11.78%. So it is underperforming their benchmark. Same thing you can see in 3 year, and it is just beating Nifty in a 5-year period. But since its inception in 2008, it has outperformed handsomely. It has given a return of 11.67%. So if you invested 10,000 rupees, it has become 38,070. But if you invested that money, Nifty would have only become 24,000 rupees. So here also you can see, when I say it is underperformed, in 1 year, if you would have invested 10,000 rupees, it would have become 8812 in the fund. But if you would have invested in the benchmark, it would have become 8839 in Nifty, right? So that's why it is underperformed. These are all statutory details. You can read through them. And this brings you what I said what I meant when I said diversification. So this fund is investing into approximately 60 different companies. And as you can see, there is a weightage that you can see as to how much money is invested into each company. These dots signify the top 10 holdings, as you can see here. So in auto sector, there is an exposure of 6.29%. In banks, there is an exposure of 20.41%. So and so forth, like we saw in the video. There are so many sectors and so many companies in which this fund is invested. These are all quantitative measures for people to do advanced kind of research. And again, these are all some compliance regulationary mandatory things that they have to declare. But just to give you a basic background, this is how you read balance sheet. So I have covered almost all aspects of it. Just to be more pro, what I would suggest that instead of reading fact sheets by downloading it from individual AMCs, it's better that you, just a second. Just a second. I accidentally stop the sharing. Yeah, I hope you are able to see this. So this is Morningstar. I have already logged into this website. You can also go on this website and register for yourself if you have this intention of learning more about or doing your own research. So all these information that you saw on the fact sheet is given in a much more consumable way on these website. Uh, because it's a US based company, they do talk in millions and billions, but you get to see a whole lot of data here, right? So what is the NAV? What is the returns that the fund has generated? You can, do some interactive things. I mean, I just got logged out, I guess. So you can log in and see how interactive it is. You can see, obviously, because it is an Indian fund, it is invested into non-US equity. It also talks about ESG, environmental, social, and governance kind of scoring, which I think we can ignore, depending on what people want. Then this is the fund manager details, and it gives you a very nice graph as to who was managing this fund earlier. So Prashant Kothari was managing it up until 2012, from 2008 when it was launched. Then Manish Gunwani, then Shankar Narayan was managing for some time, and now this fund is managed by these three funds. So all these details are very well presented. Again, 64 companies that this company is invested into, uh, how much money is there in the top 10 companies, uh, what was the daily price of these top holdings that they're holding, what is the 1 year return, and so on and so forth. There are enough of information which is available depending on how deep you want to go. But my point was to at least make you understand these basic things of understanding how a basic fund works and how you can get information about the small technical information about these funds. So with this, I would just want to complete my presentation. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Now we are open for Q&A.
I think that was a brilliant one. I mean, sort of completely packed with a lot of knowledge and, you know, and going through the fact sheet. I think it was really thought provoking. So there's one question that I get asked a lot, and something that I'm very sure even you get asked a lot is, how should I allocate my total wealth? I mean, is there a thumb rule to it? Is my question.
Yeah, thumb rule, as we all know, is a shortcut, right? I mean, if I would want to reduce my weight, but if I follow thumb rule, doesn't guarantee me success, right? So
Right.
there are thumb rules which you can follow, but the best thing to do is to take a professional advice from an advisor. But as a thumb rule, what people say is that 100 minus your age should be allocation to equity. So if I am 40 today, 100 minus 40, I should have an equity allocation of 60% for my long-term goals, which are going to be maturing after at least 5 to 10 years. So
Okay.
that thumb rule, 100 minus your age, automatically means that if you are very young and you're starting out to invest just now, 70 to 80% of your money should be invested in equities and should be rebalanced every year.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think rebalancing is the key. Is what most people tend to forget around. Also, you talked about the fact sheet here. What I would like to draw the attention is, if so, let's take it for example. As you're saying, you're an expert at reading the fact sheet. How about an amateur or somebody who's just starting, or what are those couple of key things which basically are a plus or a red flag and a green flag, basically, I would like to put it that way, while reading the fact sheet.
So great question. So like we discussed, that returns are not the only parameters, right? And that is the whole point why we are going and reading a fact sheet. So return data is available on a lot of these websites like Morningstar and Value Research, but that's not the sole purpose of investing. So I think few things that you should consider is, what is the expense of the fund? What is the AUM of the fund? Is it very, very big, or is it, or if it is too small, funds which are too small are also not advisable, and funds which are too large are also not advisable. So what is the fund size? Also the stability of the fund manager, how long the fund manager has been with the fund and managing the fund, also gives you a lot of comfort that the performance, which is the past performance, is the result of the same fund manager, and it is very likely that he might stay with the fund. So I think these are key things which one should look at. So basically the size of the fund, the loads which are applicable. So there are funds in the industry which have loads, exit loads for 2 years or more. So you have to be sure that when you're investing, you are aware about those things and size of the fund and fund manager.
Okay. Okay, I think that's great. I guess we've already overshot our time limit, so we should call it a wrap up. And if there is any questions,
Unfortunately, there are no questions. या तो मैंने बहुत अच्छा समझाया है, कुछ भी नहीं समझ में आया पब्लिक को. So I hope it is not the later case and people. So I think the best way to know about is to get a feedback. So let me just run this last poll.
so along with this poll, I would request Mukul is also there in the panelist. So if Mukul would like to ask some question or something, some last comments from him. Mukul?
So people who are there in the webinar, I would request you to give your feedback so that we know if this content that we created for you and the delivery is worth your time. I mean, you all know that time is more valuable than money, and you've spent your last more than an hour, about 70-75 minutes with us. So it would be great that if you can give your feedback so that we can keep on creating such kind of content for you.
So there are a couple of comments coming in. Hitesh is saying, thank you, nice presentation. Niranjan Ahuja has said that in the given scenario, direct investments look lucrative compared to a mutual fund. I mean, so obviously the data also supports that. So, Saurabh, if you can share your views on that.
No, I'm not sure what kind of data you are referring to, Jinesh, but I don't think so. So, see, this is not a seasonal thing,
I mean, the data that I was saying is not about the lucrative part. A lot of people have started, there's this data that come in that a lot of demat accounts, direct equity demat accounts have opened up. So on that context, I was saying that, probably it's looking lucrative to everybody.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people are, being pulled to try their hands with the equity investment. See, this is nothing to do with current scenario, right? Like, what is more important for us is to understand that when you are investing in equities directly, you should remember that you should have the capability, skill, and time to select the company which is going to give you phenomenal returns. So we all know that, Satyam was also a blue chip company at one point in time. Reliance, if you see, up until 2018, its 10-year return was negative, right? So if you invest in a stock, you have to have that conviction, knowledge, and so there is huge amount of mix that you should have to become a good investor, right? Right amount of skill, capability, time to study those, and then the right behavior to not get swayed by all the market noise. So first thing, it is not a momentarily or cyclical thing. You either be a full-time investor or you can outsource it. Now it is for you to choose. I mean, a lot of investors that we meet who are investing in equities directly, they don't track their returns. They don't even know what the returns have been on their portfolio, by how much margin they've beaten Nifty or any other benchmark. They would want to keep it. So they don't track their investment. They only talk in language of कल मैंने 2000 कमाया, 5000 कमाया, ये stock मैंने लिया था, ये double हो गया, and so forth. But you don't look at the overall picture. So there is a great analogy to it. So suppose if I give a 300-page book to someone to read, and I want him to complete that book in say 30 days, that means he has to read 10 pages every day. But if he reports me कि आज मैंने 5 पेज पढ़े, then someday he will say that last 2 घंटे में मैंने 3 पेज पढ़े, and so on and so forth. There is no guarantee that in 30 days he will actually complete that book, right? So similarly, just talking about one or two stocks for a particular moment is not the way of tracking the returns. We have a whole session that we do on behavioral finance and what is the kind of right behavior that you need to become a successful equity investors. If you are interested, you can write to us and we'll be more than happy to invite you for that session as well. So I think if either you are a full-time equity investor, you can't invest on tips. I mean, I've spoken too much on it, but I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so he's Niranjan is again. So Niranjan, if you're there, I can we do something like if we can just call him on, because he seems to be having a few more questions here. In this uncertain time, there is a fear that credit risk of bank and company or business are at stake of COVID and an impending war situation. I think that's something that is a lot of our minds. Feeling freezed as to what to do or not to do anything. I mean,
That's what I said. The key is to follow your asset allocation. These things will go up and down for some of the other reasons. This is not the first drawdown that we are seeing in our investment career. There have been more severe drawdowns. There have been, if not in India and US, we have seen things going even worse than what it is today. So the right approach to it is having a right asset allocation and realigning your portfolio to the given market scenario. I mean, there is no other way of doing it, at least from what I know, because otherwise you will just keep on trying to take a call and then you don't have tools to assess whether your call was right or wrong. And you keep on doing it again and again and not lead to a successful wealth creation journey. But there is a very interesting study which is done by Dalberg about what is an average return of index and the average return of an investor. And in most of the cases, you will find that the investor is actually earning half of what index is earning, right? So, I mean, this is what really happens when you try to try to chase the best investment product or look at things being deferred because of news and situations. I hope that answers your question, Niranjan.
Okay, so Hemant Pikle, sir has asked, how often one should rebalance the portfolio. I think that's
maybe once in a year. But what is important also is for you to decide what that date would be. For some people it can be in the month of March. For some people it can be in the month of December and so forth. You can't keep on changing that date. Otherwise, then again it becomes a exercise of trying to time the market. So if you've decided to rebalance your portfolio once in a year is an ideal thing to do. And if you decide to do it once in a year, then every fixed date of the year you can stay invested. So there is a very famous quote that in the long term, equity markets look like a weighing scale. I don't remember what it is, but the point I'm trying to make is that when you look at the back testing data, you see that ठीक है 2 साल market ने अच्छा perform नहीं किया, it is okay. But when you are actually in the journey, you might feel that it is a long time. But believe me, 1 year is a good time. Otherwise, you might incur more of a transaction cost and taxation cost. So it is definitely advisable that you do your rebalancing once in a year.
So I hope that has answered your question. So with that, we call it a wrap for today. Sure. I think it was a great presentation.
Sure.
And thank you everybody for joining in. And
thanks for your feedback and thanks for spending time with us. Thank you so much. So I'll end this, Jana, yeah?
Okay. Can you end it and while we still are there?
Okay, I'll just end this. Okay.